Stony Island Audio.
Oh my goodness, we are back, y'all. My name is Open Mike Eagle, and this is What Had Happened Was. This is season 2, episode 1 of What Had Happened Was. I'm your host, Open Mike Eagle, and I am just happy to be here. I feel super fortunate coming off of a successful season 1 in which we did a deep dive on the career of the legendary Prince Paul, discussing all of his efforts from De La Soul to Chris Rock to Grave Diggers to Handsome Boy Modeling School and everything in between. And now into this season where we sit down with LP of Company Flow, Definitive Jux, Run the Jewels fame, and we do a deep dive on his career, giving him a chance to tell his own story. Like I said, I'm happy to be here. I'm super fans of both of these people, both of them influencing my work and my journey. And, I'm lucky to be in this seat, being able to ask some questions and for them to come on this platform and use it as an opportunity to tell their own stories. That's what this show is about. That's what my podcast network, Stony Island Audio, is all about. We have a bunch of shows on Stony Island Audio. A lot of them centering around people inside of hip hop using podcasting as a platform to tell their own stories. And before we get into the episode, I want to try to shine a light on one of our podcasts. This one is the Bod Rap Pod. If you're a fan of season 1 of What Had Happened Was, and you're interested in the subject of this season, you very well may find some enjoyment in Bod Rap Pod. And rather than me try to tell their story, here's a snippet of the hosts telling the story themselves.
I'm Damone Carter.
I'm Nate LeBlanc.
I'm David Moss.
Hey, Stony Island. We are the Bod Rap Pod. 3 men of a certain age that get together every week to argue about rap shit.
You know, I feel like I've been approaching a Stony Island basically my whole life, and we're very happy to be part of this new venture. What you can expect from us is a kind of chat and interview show on hip-hop, new and old.
We feature exclusive evergreen interviews with cats like The Last Poets, Arm & Hammer, Atmosphere, Easy Mo B, and other luminaries.
And this is what you can expect from the Bod Rap Pod. New episodes every Thursday. Really happy to be a part of the Stony Island Network. If you like hip-hop, you will enjoy our program. We are the Bod Rap Pod.
So that's the Bod Rap Pod. You can check their show out every Thursday wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're about to get into it, y'all. Talking to LP. And a quick note before that happens is I want to just give y'all a little insight, a little background on what it's been like doing this season. When we did the first season with Prince Paul, we were fortunate enough that the world was relatively as normal as we remember it. And we got to do a lot of that taping. In fact, we got to do all of that taping in person. We did half of the recording sessions here in LA, and we did the other half in New York. This time around, clearly, since we recorded most of this in the last 4 to 5 months, things have been very different. So all of these episodes, all of these interviews have been recorded remotely. And in that, we've had quite the journey with technology, y'all. This first episode, and I believe the first 2 were recorded on this little known upstart, obscure software. I think it's called Zoom. Zoom is what the producers tell me it's called. I'm sure none of you all have any experience with that, but we recorded on Zoom, and we learned that the audio quality of Zoom after the fact is not the greatest. It's certainly not as good as it would be if me and LP were sitting in the same room. It's good. It's serviceable. It'll do. And, these first couple of interviews were laced with so many jewels that I didn't want to try to recreate it. So we're going to present these first couple of episodes in the quality they were recorded in. And, you're going to hear over the course of this season us kind of figuring out the best balance in terms of sound, recording remotely and trying a few different platforms. to make that happen. If the platform that we landed on decides to give us money, I might shout them out by name. But until that happens, I'm just giving y'all a note that the sound in this season is a little bit of a journey. Speaking of giving us money, we want to shout out the people at ExpressVPN. We are so happy. We're so grateful that they have chosen to sponsor this show. As you know, I watch a fair amount of anime and all sorts of television, and I don't like being restricted by what a Netflix or an Amazon or a Hulu tells me is available in my region. I've done some TV business, and I know that these companies make different deals with different regions. So there's shows that are available on these platforms that you can't watch if your computer thinks you're in America. ExpressVPN lets you change your location so you can trick these websites into thinking you're different places. And it's really easy. All you have to do is open the app, select a region, tap one button to connect, and refresh the page to access thousands of new shows and movies that were previously unavailable to you. You can choose from almost 100 different countries. You can watch Studio Ghibli movies on UK Netflix. You can watch different anime than what is available here in the US on Japanese Netflix. You can watch Doctor Who on UK Netflix. You can watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on UK Netflix. You can watch Steven Universe. I go on the UK Netflix one a lot. I haven't really gotten around to a lot of the other countries yet, but I have at least 99 other regions to explore. And aside from being the graceful sponsors of this show, another reason to choose ExpressVPN is that you can stream in HD with no problem, no buffering, no lag, and it's compatible with all your devices. I like to start watching stuff on TV, and then I'll start watching it on my iPad, and then I'll start watching it on my laptop, and then I'll be in the bed watching it on my phone. And with ExpressVPN, you can use it on all of these different devices so you can pick up and your watch experience moves with you seamlessly. And not only does it change your location, it encrypts your data so nobody can spy on what you're doing. So exclusively for listeners of What Had Happened Was, ExpressVPN is offering you 3 free months of service. That's 3 free months of ExpressVPN. Just go to expressvpn.com/what. expressvpn.com/what to get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. So shout out to ExpressVPN. Shout out to you for checking us out. Shout out to LP for coming on this program and telling his story. Well, here we go. Episode 1. What Had Happened Was.
Back. You guys get some snaps for LP tonight.
Yeah. Deluxe labor, the underground undertaker. The whole cape is independent as fuck flavor. Audio exhibit, visit the history. To him winning without fucking with the industry. And him losing without fucking with the industry. No illusion, we tracing every movement in the symphony. This is official from lifting of pencils. Cold flow the depth jugs up to the fist and the pistol. I'm sending questions like infinite missiles. Digging for details when stories from the past come up. And if he don't remember, then he has to shrug. It's what the podcast does. What had happened was. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited to kick off this new session, this new season of What Had Happened Was with a guest I'm very excited to be speaking to and doing deep dives on his amazing career. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. El Producto himself, LP. What's up, sir?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to have you and honored that you're willing to talk to me and let the people hear stories behind so much awesome stuff that you've made.
If I can remember them, you know what I mean? Like, years of drug abuse, running from my past,
I hear you, man.
I'll try.
No, I hear you, man. It's funny because as fun as me and Paul's sessions were, I could tell that after a while they were starting to feel like therapy for him. You know what I'm saying? In good ways
Right.
and in challenging ways. So it's like, you
Right.
do, especially like for artists like you and artists like him who have done so much. Like part of the way you're even able to do that is you don't fucking dwell on the past a lot. You know what I'm saying? You're always moving on to the next thing. So, sitting and thinking and talking, can be
interesting.
deep.
It's interesting. I have a theory about that. It's one that I've developed recently over the years, because I always had a terrible memory. Like I never, people would be like, you don't remember when we went to Japan together? And I'd be like, shit that like most people.
That's big shit.
That was big. You know what I mean? Like, you don't remember this dude burst in a fire and you put him out with a blanket? It's like, I'm just like, I'm sorry. Vaguely, you were there? Like I don't, and I always wondered about that, because I always like imagine that maybe someday I might like sit down and try and write a novel, or write something about my life, maybe. Although I find my life the least attractive thing to possibly write about, but like it. But in thinking about doing that, I've sort of been like, I don't think I have the type of memory for detail.
Right.
That like a real author or a real writer in that format would, and it's kind of made me confront shit, because I'm like, why don't I have a memory? And I kind of started to realize that and I'm speaking to a couple other people who I know who maybe have a similar childhood as I did. That when your childhood is tough, a little tough, when all you do is you just are waiting for the next thing.
The next terrible thing.
Because not even the next terrible thing, but you spend your entire childhood and growing up looking for the future. Like, when do I get my future? Because my present is really fucking hard. And when do I get to the part where I'm in control, where I have agency? Where do I get to the part where, and it applies to me as a musician for sure, because I've never stuck myself in one place. I've never sat back and really done what we're doing right now. Not much anyway. I did a little bit around the release of the records. But I just think that when you train yourself to shut out your history and to not deal with it a bit and to run forward and to go for greener pastures, down the line, that you don't really flex that part of your brain that is necessary to conjure too many details about what your life was. I couldn't tell you what year anything happened for the most part, I can give general, I can give but anyway, it's just interesting. I think that there's some people who you ask them, like, they'll remember 5th grade, and I'm like, I don't remember my childhood. So.
Well, I do think our first episode here, for the folks listening at home, is about an album that's near and dear to my heart. Company Flow's debut LP, Fun Crusher Plus. And I think it would do us a disservice to just dive right into that. I think we have to walk a little bit through your journey with hip hop, because you were young making all of that stuff, but everybody's entrance into hip hop is different, and you were in New York at a time when the underground was having this epic revolution. I ended up feeling it all the way in Chicago. And I'm really interested to hear how you engaged that. How did you take that journey to start rhyming and start making beats?
I think I did it the way a lot of kids did it, was just being a kid and being a fan of Run DMC, and that whole era of music, and just being in New York, just being in Brooklyn and in New York City. And, I moved to Brooklyn when I was 6 from Manhattan, and my parents got divorced and I moved to Brooklyn. And then, it was a kind of a magical time for sure. The cliches are real.
They're real.
They were taking the train, you were taking a train that was covered in fucking end-to-end burners, there were people breakdancing on the street on cardboard. There were people walking around with giant boom boxes with record players in them, like straight up.
That don't even sound like. How does that even work?
You know, I still to this day haven't gotten one of those. Like, I was like, Mom, I want one of those. She's like, shut the fuck up. Take this bootleg Voltron toy. But so, you know, just being a kid and just loving it.
So did you? But did you always rhyme as a kid? Like, did you grow up rhyming?
I guess so. I mean, I wrote my first rhyme on a piece of paper that I still have framed on a piece of construction. My mother framed it for me years ago. She surprised me with it years ago, and that she had framed the first rap that I ever wrote. I think it was 10.
Damn.
And, you know, I'm Jam J, the impossible child. When I tell my tale, all the girls are beguiled. I'm pretty proud that I used that word at the time.
That's tight. I still wouldn't use that word now. I don't all the way know what it means. So you were pretty advanced.
But it was just me. It just started with me doing just rhyming out loud, and then inserting my name into the rhyme. You know what I mean? And then eventually just freestyling, and then eventually writing it down, and you know, and just playing with it. And I never took it really seriously as something I wanted to do, except I just thought it was the most awesome thing in the world. Right. I just thought that it was my city. I was just like, I was right at that age where I was the target audience for this. Like, it just made me happy. And, you know, especially when Run DMC hit the scene, and it was like, oh, so you don't have to like dress in like a sequin,
right?
Like, you know, like
it's not disco. Yeah.
You know, you know, you don't have, like, those dudes look just cool, like regular New York dudes. Cool. Right. You know, like, they just look like all they had to do was become adults. Right. Like, they didn't have to become Ziggy Stardust, you know, like they didn't have to become, you know, you know, Funkadelic. Right. They just had to become cool. And
they didn't have the big shoulder pads with the spikes and the mohawks and none of that.
Which I'm not knocking, which I'm not, but it's less relatable.
Right.
You know, it doesn't make you, but you know, when you're looking at someone who looks like they're from another planet, it's very hard to imagine getting from where you're at to there, you know?
Right.
You know, looking at someone who's just taller than you and has on a jean jacket is like, you know, well, I could probably do that someday.
Yeah, I can wear a jean jacket.
Yeah. and hence, you know, and hence I do. And, you know, but as I got a little older and I was obsessed with rap and I was up on everything that came out, and I was listening to Mr. Magic and, you know, and I was listening to Red Alert, and I was listening to everything that I could get my hands on, and there were tapes being traded and stuff. And then I had a boombox that had this story I share with, I think, a lot of producers. I have a boombox that I had a dual cassette deck and a mic in it, an external mic. Mm-hmm. And I started making pause tapes. Mm-hmm. I started to figure out how to make pause tapes, which is the classic, you know, you play it from one side and record it on the other side, and then you pause right before the downbeat, and then you rewind, then you let go, and then you pause again, and it takes about fucking an hour, and then, you know, and then you have, like, you know, 3 minutes of a consistent loop. Right. I got really good at that. I got to the point where I started remixing songs, you know. I started getting creative with it because reflexively I was so good at just the normal shit that I started to play around with edits and play around with what I could do. And that sort of made me want to start to rap over it. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, I got this, and I got the little mic here too. So now I can put that tape here. Every time you did it, the sound degraded. You know what I mean? So it's like you recorded it here, then you took what you recorded, you put it back here, and then you recorded it here again. The second time you did it, it was with the mic.
Right.
And so I started doing that. And you know, school ultimately ended up not working out for me, but I had already started writing things. I had started making demos. I already started writing. By the time I was this is where we bump into the memory thing. but by the time I was probably 12, 13, I was trying to make jams. You know?
You were trying to like make records.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I was, you know, I didn't know, I was terrible and I didn't know what I was doing, but I was trying to figure out who I was. Who am I? Like, what is this? You know, like, and trying to, and it was just for me, but by the time I got to probably about 13, I started to take it seriously. I started to be like, I want to get good at this. You know, and that's when I had borrowed a friend of mine had this little Casio SK1, which was the first sort of sampler that was available to the public that wasn't thousands of dollars, but it was for children. So it was just like it was this big. It had 20 keys, you know, and it was very thin, and it was like it had like 2 seconds of sampling time on it. So you had to sample the record at 45 so that you could record it at, and it was played in scale. So the lower you got, the higher it was, the faster, and then the lower you got on the keyboard, the slower. So you play it on 45, you sample it, and it samples at the key up here, and then you go all the way down the keyboard, and then you get the slower loop. You know what I mean? The longer loop. You had to extend. So I was already trying to figure out tricks as to how to make this thing work.
Right.
And then you can, instead of doing a pause tape, it was a finger thing. Then now I'm playing beats like this. And then I got a 4-track, bought some used Tascam 4-track or whatever. And now I'm playing the beat all the way through. And then I'm sampling other things and I'm playing them in, bam! You know, like, you know, whatever. Like, and, so by the time I was like a freshman, I was pretty much trying to make jams. And, by the time I was a sophomore, I was out of the system. I had been kicked out of school. You know, I had been kicked out of school, and I was officially trying to be a rapper.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the stuff that really entranced you about hip hop, because your style for the longest has been so like complex, and so when you dedicated yourself to getting good. Like who were you looking at as like really dope at that time that pushed you to kind of like, you didn't want to do like regular A-B patterns? Like what made you want to like go more complex with like the structures of what you were writing?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think I did do regular A-B patterns for a long time. You know, like the first, you know, I've got probably years and years of demo tapes rotting in storage that no one will ever hear because
release the tapes.
I can't even subject myself to those things.
For sure.
Back in the day, you know, back when I was a kid, you know, everyone didn't hear your worst songs. You know, like you heard the best song, you know, like, and so, you know, but I don't think that I consciously necessarily made that choice, but I think really all the way up into Company Flow, I was a pretty traditional sort of style. I had a pretty traditional New York style. And I was still trying to land that, you know what I mean? I was still trying to kind of get into that, but something about the chemistry between me and Just, we started to, you know, and something about, there was no one that I was necessarily thinking, oh, I've got to change my style for that. You know, I was like, I want to be Big Daddy Kane. I want to be Cool G Rap. I want to be EPMD. You know what I mean? I would have been happy, you know? But, you know, and to me, in my mind, I always was making those records, but I'm weird. So the shit just came out.
Through the lens of your creativity, it comes out this way.
Exactly. And it's like, hey, what do you think? It sounds like EPMD, right? And they're like, no. Nope. You know, and I'm like, well, I mean, you know, obviously the influence is there. And they're just like, you know, like, you know, eventually there was a creative explosion.
Right.
And, I mean, and look, the stakes were higher in the early 90s. They had become higher.
Right.
Like, I mean, shit, even if you wanted to go even just to De La, or if you even wanted to go to Cool G Rap, or if you wanted to go to, like, there were already crazy strides being made in terms of what you could do on a record as a lyricist that I was right there following and being, you know, there was a period of time in growing up where the records that we were all waiting for, you know, like you knew a new rap record was out. It didn't matter what the fuck rap record it was. That's how rare it was that it had made it to a label, gotten funding, been recorded, and is now in whatever store that you can go to, that you can get your mom to let you go and maybe buy something. So you were right there along, growing with at the same time the art, you know?
Right.
So every time you thought that you kind of had something figured out, someone will come out and do something that had never been done in hip hop before. And that was a magical time to exist. I think that that's plateaued over the years, and then it's ramped up again, and then it's plateaued again. But there was a period of time of about maybe 15 years where it was just an all out, like everyone was inspired.
Where everybody was pushing everybody else.
Everyone was pushing, you know, everyone was, I mean, you know, then you had motherfuckers like Organized Confusion drop on the scene, and you're just like,
Wake up, rise up to the words of organized. Visualize the man in the logo, sogos, the madness trapped into the mind of the foul. Vocals are going long distance.
oh, okay, like, oh, it's on, like, you can do, like, oh, you're allowed to do that shit, like, okay, like, yeah, like, and I feel like we hit that sweet spot right where we were confident in the fact that we could make some jams and confident in something, but also we really were let loose in our minds in terms of reaching, you know, in terms of being like, you know what, like the sinister grin, like, I want to do something fucked up, you know, like I actually want to destroy it all, not destroy the culture, but I want to destroy what I think that everyone knows about it, and come in, and I want people to, you know, look, I also come from a scene where cats were, you know, it's not the battle scene exactly, but it used to be that dudes knew that I rap, they'd bring their friend over who would rap, and you'd have to battle each other in your apartment. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a televised thing with two dudes like yelling in each other's faces. It was like the beats were going and cats were smoking, and like, you know, and
it was just seeing who was gonna get it the hardest at that moment. Yeah,
and you know, so you carry that into some shit where you're like, I want to do something that's gonna shut the room down. I want to do something that's gonna be like, it's gonna elicit a couple of reactions. Either A, what the fuck was that? B, I can't do that, you know, because I'm not even there in my head. And C, you know, that shit is fucking ill. That shit is ill. Because it doesn't matter if you're doing some shit that no one gets or likes and is different. You know, like, it's like, you know, it's like, congrats. You know, you did something that's too weird for anyone to like. And so, you know, and it's about, you know, knowing where to diverge is about knowing where to plant your foot in tradition. You know, the difference or what you're doing will only be appreciated and recognized if you're doing it in the context of something that you are acknowledging. You know, like, I'm acknowledging that I'm here in these lines, and I'm gonna fucking poke my hand up above that line, but I'm still here in these lines. So when I do that, you're gonna, you know, hopefully you're gonna recognize it and feel it, because I'm not just abandoning what you love about it, you know?
Because you do care about it. You're not doing it, like you said, you don't want to destroy the institution or destroy the context, but you do want to subvert it at particular times.
I wanted to subvert what the rules were for myself within it. I wanted to subvert or I wanted to be free to play. I wanted to be free to play. There have been so many people that I looked up to, that I learned from, that I based everything I know on and everything I could do on. But I wanted something that was my own, and it wasn't some sort of like contrived thing, like I'm going to come up with something weird. It was like, I'm just going to let myself kind of do the weird shit that does actually occur to me, you know? And when you find a group of people who are into that, you know, when you find a group of friends who are like, yeah, do that, that's ill. It helps. So I blossomed in that, you know, in that context, like, you know, having like Just and Len around, and they were on the same shit, man. Cats were really traditionalists, you know, like really rooted in, and, you know, really were there and loved everything about the music, and knew how it got to where it got, was there listening as it evolved, felt the alchemical change of being involved as they listened to it, because they were experiencing that not as a retroactive thing, but as a first time thing. And but I had stumbled on just something that was fun for me, which is like, I'm gonna drop your jaw here. I'm gonna say 8 things to your 4. You know,
right.
Like, you know?
So there's a lot said about the open mic scene in New York around the time that I first started hearing the company float. Uh, so you would hear about New Eurekan Poet Cafe. You would hear
Yeah.
about Lyricist Lounge.
I was there, buddy.
Yeah, what was your relationship to those places?
Man, New Eurekan Poets Cafe, probably more than Lyricist Lounge for me. Although I did do Lyricist Lounge, and we even did a couple of like kind of classic shows there. I mean, we did a Company Flow and Ultra Mag show, and it was a great venue. It was cool. But New Eurekan Poets Cafe felt a little bit more like an extension of the Stretch and Bobbito
Yeah.
scene, and the Stretch and Bobbito scene, which emanated out all over, tentacles everywhere, and it really brought people from every borough and sometimes from every state. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? But that was a special, and that, you know, when I think about it, that was one of those places that when I think about that time in terms of like venues, when there were no deals. What you have to understand about that period of time is that while there was a creative explosion, while the creative explosion came from everybody agreeing that they were not into what was happening in the mainstream. It wasn't like, I don't want to be successful. It was like, we're like, everyone was into being an artist. Everyone was super into the culture of being that. Everyone, like, it was something that was giving a lot of kids direction, and that didn't, and rules, you know, things, you know, a code that people that, you know, we search for, a lot of latchkey kids, you know.
Same here, honestly. Like I like to tell people all the time, like, finding like the b-boy arts as a performing art, like that shit saved my life in so many ways, because it gave me a way to like engage with other people and some shit that I understood the rules to, and like, oh, all I got to do is get tight. Okay, word. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it is.
Yeah. And there was such a it's hard to describe to people if you weren't there, but there was such an overwhelming sense of generosity and community. It wasn't competitive. It wasn't combative. It was like everyone was there and they wanted to see what the fuck you got. And it was, but it wasn't like, show me what you got, kid. It was like everyone was kind of at the same level. Everyone was explosively creative, but there were no outlets. There was no label system that put out the type of stuff that was happening yet. And there were, you know, at that time, it was either like you get a deal and you do that thing or not. But the deal was like this mythical thing on a mountain that I think was so mythical and so unobtainable and also weird for so long. Like, maybe I'll get a demo deal, you know, I'm going to give my tape to some intern at Jive Records, you know, like it was so unobtainable that I think it turned back around on the community where everyone was like, fuck that shit. And out of that, fuck that shit, all of a sudden everyone was hanging out at different spots, be it Washington Square Park, be it New Eurekan Poets Cafe. If you were lucky, you got up on the Stretch and Bob. And so, because everyone on Thursday night from fucking 1 to 4 a.m. was listening to Stretch and Bob. And that to us was, you made it. You made it if you're on Stretch and Bob. And we listened, and we just did that while we were making the Company Flow record. We would just listen every night. We'd brush our teeth and sit there and just fucking listen, you know, hours upon hours.
And now a word from our sponsors.
We're going to get back into our talk with LP in just a moment, but I need to take a second to remind you of our sponsor that we're really grateful for, ExpressVPN. If you're like me and you like to watch lots of TV stuff on the apps, and you don't like being told by said app what you can watch based on what deal they've made with the region you're in, you can use ExpressVPN to tell that app you are in another place. If you want to access Japanese content on the Japanese server, if you want to access all the different programs that are available on UK Netflix, for instance, you can use ExpressVPN to let your computer tell Netflix that you are not in the US. You're in the UK. You're in the EU, Japan. No, you're just in Japan. There's 100 regions that you can choose from. Only a few of them begin with U. And changing your location with ExpressVPN is really easy. Just open the app, Select one of those 100 locations, tap one button to connect, and then you just refresh whatever app you're in, and suddenly you have access to all this programming that you previously were told wasn't even there. It's in the app already. They're just hiding it from you. So why choose ExpressVPN over other services? Well, one, they've been gracious enough to sponsor what had happened was. But aside from that, you can also use ExpressVPN to stream in HD with no buffering or lag. It's compatible with all of your devices, phone, laptop, tablet, TV, and not only does it change your location, it encrypts your data so no creepy spy creeps can creepy spy on what you're doing. So for listeners of What Had Happened Was, ExpressVPN is offering 3 months of service for free. Just go to expressvpn/what. That's expressvpn/what to get 3 free months of ExpressVPN. expressvpn/what.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
I want to hear something about, as succinct as you feel we could put it across. I want to talk about or hear about putting a group together. Like, what brought you, Lynn, and Josh together to make Company Flow?
Well, Company Flow started just as me coming up with a name that was cooler than just me. I've been growing up on growing up on groups, and I always thought a group was just so cool. I just thought it was Run DMC, Public Enemy, right. EPMD. I didn't want to just be like Jamie Moline, but I didn't have a group. I just had an idea for a name. But I very, very soon, I got kicked out of high school. I went to musical engineering school. So at 16 years old, I went to musical engineering school. I'm going to just do this because it makes sense and it helps understand how we got there. But I went to this place called Center for the Media Arts, which was in Manhattan, which was right around the corner from FIT. Doesn't exist anymore. But at the time, because my mother was like, you're not going to be the dude who gets kicked out of high school and just doesn't do shit.
Right.
So she was like, what do you want to do? She was very cool about it. I mean, I love her for this and I'll carry that with me wherever I go. If I ever have kids, I will carry that with me because she actually, for the first time, no one had ever asked me what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't a question you ask kids, but after fuck up, single parent household, and I'm getting kicked out of schools and running around, not doing what I'm supposed to do. She was like, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I said the thing that every white mom wants to hear, which is, I want to be a rapper. And I want to be a producer. I want to be a rapper. And she was like, well, we're going to find somewhere where you can get something somewhere with that. But it's not going to be that you just sit around here and just work on it. And I was like, all right. And then she found this school, and I was like, it's engineering school. It wasn't for people who wanted to be producers and rappers. It was for people really who wanted to be engineers, But it got you into the studio, and it got you into with teachers, and it got you into getting your hands on things, equipment and being in a professional environment and learning the ropes to some degree. I learned Pro Tools. But Pro Tools was like $20,000 and it was 2 tracks. You know what I mean? It was like
a giant outboard machine. Yeah.
Yeah. They damn near had the engineer smock on when they did it was like a supercomputer. But so I did that. And through that, I met, I made friends with someone who was 24 years old. Mm-hmm. I was 16. I lied about my age to get into the place. I had taken my GED, I guess, at around 17. I took my GED, maybe. I don't know. Again, who knows? But I went to this place. I met my friend Lou from Hollis, Queens. Mm-hmm. And Lou was, he had at 24, which to me was ancient. He was in engineering school. He was on an uptick because he had a lot of drinking problems and a lot of things going on in his life that prior to me meeting him. And then when I met him, he was this calm, wonderful, nice guy from Hollis who got to know me. We shared a lot. We shared a lot of the same musical interests, and I knew everything about rap. And he was like, he started to see what I was doing, and he was like, you know, probably the first person to be like, yo, you should get a fucking deal. And I was like, okay, how do you get a deal? You know, how do you get a deal? He would bring me up to Hollis, Queens, and we would go do demos. Some of them were done at like the studio of the dude who was in the Disco Twins. Okay. I don't know if you know who the Disco Twins are. I didn't know either at the time. But since then, I was like, the Disco Twins. Oh, yeah, sure. But you know, the Disco Twins were, you know, a group from New York that kind of tried to pop off and like had a little record or something.
The twins are on the cut while I'm busting it up, and everybody at the party is doing the butt. And for those who bite, just get ready to fight. I destroy on sight, so kiss your ass goodnight.
But he had a studio in Hollis, Queens. We used to go there and do demos and shit. So, long story short, I did get a little single deal with a friend of Lou's. And this dude was a dude by the name of Darren Johnson, who went under the name Antex and had a rap record out on Tough City. So he had an album out. He had gotten a little, you know, success in an indie way, I guess, you know, and him and another dude have decided that they were going to start an indie label. Here I am, like 16 years old, and I'm like, and they were like, oh, we'll give you a deal. So to me, it was like, oh, that's it. I'm a star. That's amazing. Like, that's what I've been waiting for. Thank you. That was actually pretty easy. Like, yeah. And, but I didn't have, and I made this song. And I didn't have anybody, when I was hanging out with those dudes and I was hanging out in Hollis, and, you know, I was this fucking little asshole kid who was in over his head and like trying to be cool and shit. But, you know, I wasn't that cool. I don't think, you know, I was a good guy, but I wasn't cool. Not in the way that these 24-year-old dudes were. In my mind, they were just like, holy shit, I didn't understand any. They knew how to make, you know, they knew equipment. They knew how, they were in the industry. It was like, and we started a studio together, because I had a sampler and a room and, right after I had like made this song and written this song, and I didn't have the hook yet. And for my 18th birthday, it was already done. It was already ready to go. And I put it out right as I turned, it was done when it was written when I was 17, and I put it out right when I turned 18. And I met Mr. Land I had a birthday party.
It was your birthday party.
My birthday party.
Okay.
At the loft that I lived in, that was my mother's spot.
Okay.
My mother had a spot that she had built like about like a dozen rooms in. Okay. And this is pre-Airbnb.
All right.
She had built like, you know, we had this great spot. It was this loft. And I was like, this is amazing. And she was like, yeah, it is. I'm going to fill it with 12 people. And I'm going to build, because I don't have any fucking money coming in. So I'm going to build mad rooms in this bitch. And I'm going to get students. So it was
such an excellent hustle. Moms was on it.
She was on it. And it was a flop house, basically. It was like, you know, and it was just mayhem. But it was, you know, students and blah, blah, blah. And anybody who wanted like a cheap room, she would fill it. And I had a room there. And I had built a little studio out of a closet, literally, in there. And long story short, I keep saying that because it's never going to be short. But so we threw a little party at that spot. Threw a little party. I'm turning 18, and through Lou and Darren, who I now knew, they were like, "Oh, we'll have our boy Lenny. Lenny's been working with us on some shit. We'll have him DJ the party." And so Len comes. Me and Len are the exact same age. Okay. This is the first dude that I've met out of this crew that's my age. I like him immediately. We like each other immediately. Yeah. I see that he's got some chops. Yeah. He's on the turntables. We got 1200s in the living room. He's blending shit, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm freestyling over them, and you know, we're doing what you do at a party, you know. And after that, I was like, I just kept in touch with him. I was like, we just like each other. We vibe. We had the same influences. Like I said, we're the same age. So I asked him if he wanted to be down. I was like, look, I got this thing called Company Flow. It's just me, but you know, I need a DJ. because Run DMC had a DJ, so I probably need a DJ.
It's a good call.
You know, so from then on, it was like, cool. He gave me the hook for that record. And then that was Company Flow. Okay. Now, we met just through the same people. So when these guys started to get their label off the ground and they started to actually try, like one of them was going to be one artist. They had another dude named Lamel, who was from Hollis, Queens, who was like one of the dudes that like LL Cool J, the legend was that LL Cool J like kind of ripped him off. Like it was just some weird shit. Good dudes, you know, good dude. They started trying to do the independent label hustle. They were doing independent promotions. They were like, this is back in the day when people were like, they'd be a promotional team. So they'd be faxing shit all day long.
Yeah, street teaming and all that type of shit.
It was more like radio promotion. It was more like we're creating one sheets about artists and we're faxing it.
Gotcha.
So someone at some radio station is looking at the office and there's a fax coming out. Like, Rappy Rap J, you know, and it's like, it's these dudes making the facts. Just was down with them. Just was childhood friends. Just was childhood friends with them. And so Just had been out of town on some miscreant adventure, and he had come back into town. And so he got introduced into the crew. And I liked Just, and Just was really into what I was doing. And he ended up, you know, a room in that fucking flop house ended up coming free. And some student or someone went away, and I was like, yo, and he needed a spot. And I was like, why don't you post up here and we'll just make music. He had a sampler. He had like, you know, that I think he stole. Like, I think he used to like, you know, he was like a, you know, relatively mischievous guy. Yeah. And we ended up, you know, having this studio. So the music that I was making kind of after that first jam that I did under the name Company Flow, between the time of 1993 and 1996, it was really just me and Just and Len just sort of vibing out, coming over, and really me and Just fucking writing and kind of trying to outdo each other on the lyrics. And I would make the beats, and we would just sit up all night and do this shit, smoke weed and do this. It didn't, you know, by the time we had looked up, it was originally going to be solo. We were going to put out some jams separately. Gotcha. One side was going to be Company Flow, and that was going to be Vital Nerve. The other side was going to be Big Just featuring LP, which was going to be 8 Steps to Perfection. Gotcha. I made the music for both, and I remember we were kind of prepping to do that, and I was like, yo, why don't you just be in Company Flow, the cooler name, you know? And we're making jams, like we're making songs together. Records, yeah, it doesn't mean
this was all supposed to be out through your homie's record label originally?
No. That went south. Gotcha. That went south. So that whole thing went bad. Like they, you know, I was just a kid, and they were like, I forget what happened, but we bumped up against each other, and they were like, "You're shelved. You're never going to make another record again. Your career is over." And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I just got the deal. You know, you just gave me the deal, and I thought that meant that I was secure. And now you're telling me it's over? Like, I didn't even finish high school, man. Like, you know, so, you know, I was wrecked. I was like, oh, fuck. But, you know, Just was, you know, their friend. You know, shit happens or whatever. And, you know, the past is the past. But Just stuck by me because I think that we were really he was really interested in the music that we were making. And he knew that I was just a kid, and he knew that I was, you know, Just is 24 too, you know.
Oh, so he was a little older. Okay.
Yeah. Just is about 8 years older than me.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's right. Yeah. If not, maybe a little more, but so we just, you know, me and Just basically posted up. He stuck around, and we were posted up. In the meantime, during the day, that we would go work at Tower Records. Okay. And so we had both gotten the Tower mail order department job, nice. which was on the top of Lafayette, and then it was above Tower Books. So I don't know if you were ever in New York when Tower Records and Tower Books and shit was.
I think I went by Tower once in New York, but
yeah. Well, here's how it worked. They put the dudes in the front with the computers, and those dudes had to wear shirts and slacks. And those dudes were doing the entries and shit for what credit card entries and shit for what people were ordering. Because before the internet, And before it was the thing, people would order from the Tower Records mail order catalog.
I see.
And in the back, where I was the work release dudes. The dudes who couldn't get a job anywhere else or weren't qualified necessarily to do anything or didn't really want to try to do anything like me. And and those dudes were just fucking assholes, and we were hot, smoking weed and pissing, fucking around, and we were in the back, but we were wrapping up the packages. We were the grunts. And so Just was in the front, I was in the back, and he had to wear the shirt, and it didn't even matter what I wore,
Right.
And like I said before, I'm probably personally responsible for sending out 10,000 Bone Thugs and Harmony CDs across America. At literally during that period of time, we were taking the money that we made and we would go to the studio at night, and we would buy time.
And so this is the music that became the original Fun Crusher?
Yes.
Okay. So what did that name come from, Fun Crusher?
So there's a story for that. So the way that the name happened was Just had written a rap down on a piece of paper, and he spit it to me, but I was not paying attention or whatever, and then I picked his pad up to read what it said, and I burst into hysterical laughter because I thought that he wrote the word Fun Crusher down, which I just thought, because our whole thing was that we were obsessed with language. We were obsessed with how can you make things that aren't supposed to make sense make people laugh? Right. And how can you make it, and how or make people feel like they've been insulted, and you know what I mean, or just fuck with language in a way that just didn't. That was our kick, the shit that was that English is a really dope language because it's modular and you can fucking change it and move it around and you can create new shit, as you know. And so I read this shit and I just read the word. It said the ill Fun Crusher, and I was like, yo, that is the illest shit I have ever fucking heard. Fun Crusher. And he was like, what? I was like, Fun Crusher. He was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, it says it right here, the ill Fun Crusher. And he was like, Gun Runner. It says Gun Runner. And we just burst into fucking laughter, and we just and we couldn't stop. And it was just we were just on the spot. We were like, that's the album.
That's
Fun Crusher. Because we were just that is the most, we were interested in how can we be the biggest assholes possible? How can we in one word be we're a different breed of fucking asshole here. You've never met this breed. We're so fucked up that we're, as a badge of honor, going to destroy any joy that you have. That was kind of part of what our humor was we looked for mistakes, and then we took those mistakes and we incorporated them.
L, the maladjusted MC Fun Crusher.
And because to some degree, we never really thought anyone was going to be listening to this music except us. Right. So we just made each other laugh,
So, so y'all put together the Fun Crusher. I don't know if you want to call it the EP, original LP. I'm not
EP.
Sure. EP.
It was the first. It started as an EP, 8 songs, but it was an EP.
And earlier you were saying how the idea of getting a deal was something mythical, and I know you had the situation with the homies that ended up going south, but how did you end up in the position to get a deal for Fun Crusher? Get a deal for Company Flow when that seemed like such a far away thing?
We didn't. After that experience, what happened was I was in a really shitty, I didn't read the contract that I was under this dude's management contract. And it was one of those classic Bible contracts. Yeah. And I didn't even read that shit. I was just let's go. Yeah. And as so many kids do. Mm-hmm. And then when it fell apart and I got scared that I was going to be trapped in the thing because they really had me over. It was really classic fuck you in the ass contract shit. And not in the good way, not in the way that, I sought out, I had this book called This Business of Music. And it was written by this guy, William Krasowski, who was Bruce Springsteen's lawyer and Chuck Berry's lawyer and like Ahmad Jamal's lawyer. And like, there was a famous industry guy who had written this book that was a tome. If you wanted to learn about the music business, which I did, that was the book, you know? And I looked him up. I looked and saw that he had law offices in New York. And I looked him up because I needed to figure out how to get out of the deal. So I went to his office and said, here's this deal that I'm in. I don't know what I got myself into. If you can help me get out of it, help me get out of it. But whatever you need, I just want to learn. I want to intern here. I want to understand because I don't know. I obviously don't fucking get it. I obviously don't know anything about how people operate. It was such a shock to me that anyone would even think to like lock a kid down in the contract. I was like, and I knew that I needed to do this for my life. I knew that and so he was like, all right, like, fuck it. You want to work for free for me for filing papers and shit? I'll take a look at your shit. And so that's what happened. I did. And he did get me out. He did get me out of that thing because some crazy thing. It was like I had signed it when I was a minor or something.
Okay.
I had signed the contract when I was a minor. So he was just like, I don't even worry about it.
Right.
You know, and there was no co-signature or anything like that. So, you know, he got me out. But because of that, and I was around him and I got to soak up a little bit of his perspective on the business and it resonated with me. And because of my experience on the business, I had a healthy disgust at a very young age for the way that artists were treated very early out of direct experience. And that translated into us making our own songs or whatever and doing our own thing. And then what we thought was, well, we'll just press these records. We'll just press something up. And still, we were still in the mind state of maybe then we'll get a deal.
Right.
And we were pressing the records up. And before we did it, we realized, why are we just doing this single? Like, that's what we were going to do. We were going to do that A and B side thing.
12 inch.
And 2 songs. And we were like, but we got 8 songs. And I think they might fit on this vinyl. You know what I mean? Like, and why are we not doing that? You know? And so we were just like, yeah, fuck it. You know, if we're going to get these shits pressed up, which we had put together some money to press up a small run of these, you know, of some records. We had contacted a little indie plant and we had fucking sucked out the number and shit. And we were like, we'll put this investment in. You know, we were on it. We were like, we're going to invest in ourselves and we're going to try and get pop. And we just ended up putting all the songs on there. And then we were like, we still went ahead with the plan of sending it out. Now, what the other part of the plan was, is that once we pressed up these couple of hundred records, we were going to send them, and we did, all over the country using the Tower Records mail order.
Oh.
So we scammed Tower Records mail order. He was in the front with the computers.
Right.
Entering the numbers, but, you know, and I was in the back wrapping them up and shipping them out. So everybody across the country, every DJ that we could find, and bear in mind, we had a list of DJs because the previous people that we were working with, that's what they did. They sent records to DJs.
They sent faxes. They sent records to DJs.
So we had a Rolodex of fucking names and what stations that they were at. And we sent those records everywhere, next day delivery, all over the country, you know, for free.
On Tower's dime, yeah.
On Tower's dime. Yep. Come and get me, boys. You know, but we started to actually make some noise. I mean, obviously Stretch and Bob were playing. They were playing first of all, Stretch and Bob were playing the demos that we were making that ended up on that EP.
Wow.
They were playing them off a cassette. I had met Bob because he liked that first jam I did. And I went up to there in 1993 to freestyle or whatever. And we clicked. They let, you know, and he was a supporter right from the jump.
That's tight.
And so I would feed Bob songs as we made them, you know, Peep Around Corners, you know, Fire Which You Burn, 8 Steps to Perfection, Vital Nerve. These songs, I just fed him, and we'd sit there and listen with a beer and listen and see if they played them. And they started playing them. And our names started ringing out. Our names started ringing out on the underground off of these demos. So when we finally put the records together, people unexpectedly to us were actually like looking for the shit already. And it started to take off, and people started ordering them for us. And we started actually pressing more. And by that point, we had started to get a taste of like, wait a second. This is cool. Like, we press this shit up and then we sell it and then I get the money and I didn't have to deal.
Right. You get 100% of the money. Like, you don't have to deal with no weird splits or recoups or none of that shit.
None of that shit. And it's like, we were like, and bear in mind at the same time, we're looking at the fucking mainstream music that's going on at that time and being like, that's not what we do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So how could I possibly get into that realm? But no one told me that I could do this on my own and actually not have to deal with assholes.
Right.
You're telling me that we can just do this shit. No one tells us what to make. No one tells us what to do. And we do it on our own time, our own dime, and we get the money back. And all of a sudden, as a young man, as a, 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, I like have a little money in my pocket. Like I can go like get an apartment or some shit. That's crazy. So that's why we didn't get a deal, because we started to get gassed on what was happening. We started to get excited about it. Like, wait a second. Up until that point, it was either you were not in business or you were on a major label, and everyone in between had to just be in it for the art and just hope that something magical happened.
Right.
We were like, wait, there can be something here that works for our life, that is exciting, that, and we started to get into it. That's why the independent as fuck thing happened, because we were sitting at the fucking kitchen table, cutting out letters and with glue sticks and blah, 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 to like try and like make the labels that we were going to fucking Xerox and then make the 12-inch with. And I literally, this is a true story. I literally looked at Jeff and I looked at the pile of garbage on our table. And I looked at us just by ourselves, just trying to like make a record with our hands. Yeah. And I was like, yo, we're not just independent, man. We're independent as fuck. and we laughed. And
That's
we laughed.
Hard.
And we were like, yeah, we are, aren't we? And I was like, yeah, we are, actually. And I'm putting that right here. And we're writing that on this shit. And that's what we did. And from that point on, we were like, yeah, fuck a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So then what happens? So Rawkus enters the picture, and I've read of a bidding war, but I wanted to get your perspective on that, like, because that's mythical too, like in terms of the legendary status of it. Like I want to hear from you. Like, was there a bidding war for CoFlow?
Not in the sense that there was like giant bags of money being thrown at us and everyone was trying to compete with each other to get us, but the record did well.
Yeah.
The record did well independently, thanks to Stretch and Bob, and thanks to stores like Fat Beats, and thanks to distributors like on the West Coast, like the one that Peanut Butter Wolf worked at. What was it?
That wasn't Access, was it? Or
no? Yeah. I forget. And thanks to all of a sudden, I think that Company Flow had the first legitimate selling independent hit of that era, of the new era, that had gotten nothing but crazy reviews and also was generating real fucking sales.
Right.
And for us, real sales was, we probably did 180, 100, it was real. It was
that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
It was like, holy shit, we were blown away. And this is not immediately, but it's like, it kept, and the impact that the music was happening was real. And people were now looking at Company Flow as though it was the thing that was happening at the time in hip hop music that wasn't commercial, you know? It was defining for people that there was another scene, that there was another idea out there and another thing that could happen. And I think also it was part of not only intellectually and spiritually defining the ideals of an independent scene, but it was also showing that an independent scene could actually be valuable. That the music that was happening with all these amazing talented artists in this scene that never really had any outlets, that there was actually a business there.
Yeah.
And that these people didn't have to change who they were in order to make money. And that was important. Like, yo, actually, you can be this weird, or you can be this aggressive or hard, or you can be this interesting.
Yeah.
You can be this even unpolished to some degree, but the energy is important, and you can actually have a career.
Yeah, you don't have to starve because you want to be different than what's happening in the mainstream.
or you are different just naturally. And so after that kind of had an impact, after that EP had an impact, we started to get calls. Mm-hmm. We started to get calls from a lot of different types of labels, from major labels to emerging indie labels, not only on the East Coast, but on the West Coast. And at this point, we were pretty on our own dicks.
Because, for sure.
Because we had done it ourselves.
Right.
And we were like, what, you know, I mean, I'm talking about like going to record labels and putting my feet up on the desk and smoking a cigar. Like,
shit.
tell me what are you gonna give me? You know, again, I was a bit of a, I was a bit of a prick, but you
earned the right to be in that situation. You earned the right to be.
I was young and I had a chip on my shoulder, not only just in general as a person, but also about the industry.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't like super open and receptive to meeting with these people. I wasn't really, I had whatever magic in my head about that system that used to be there when I was a kid had basically taken a turn. And I had actually a converse opinion about it. I actually thought that it was bullshit.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's always, the truth is always somewhere in the middle, right? And not everybody is bullshit. But we went around and we had these meetings and deal offers started to come in. So I don't know if that makes it a bidding war, but I do know that there were.
I mean, but that is. There's people. You're getting competing offers. People are trying to impress y'all. They see what's going on with CoFlow and they want to be in the CoFlow business.
Sure, that did happen, and one of the last labels that we met with was Rawkus. Mm-hmm. And at the time, they really didn't have much of a name. They had an office and they had records that they had put out, but they didn't have anything that really defined them as a label. It wasn't like a known entity. It wasn't like people were like, oh shit, you're going to Rawkus Records. It was like, who's Rawkus Records? And that was kind of our perspective too. But they were like, no, these guys actually really want to talk. They seem like they might be real about this shit. And we were like, all right, fine. It's in New York. We can go talk to these guys. But the thing about it is one of the things that I forgot to mention is that what we did at that time, instead of like listening to really what offers were, what they wanted to do for us, we were so serious about how we wanted to operate and so okay with not getting a deal. That's like, it was one of those things where we tried to make it as hard as possible for anyone to sign.
Yeah.
Because we were like, we can be a label. So what we did was we outlined a series of deal points ahead of time and we brought them to people. And most of those people, when we held those deal points out, most of it was like the Ark of the Covenant being opened and the spaces being blown off and shit, like, look away, like, and, rightfully so, because we were like, okay, here's the deal. We're going to own the masters. It's a 50-50 split. It's a one-off deal, and you're going to give us $100,000 up front.
It's automatically non-starters, I'm assuming, for a lot of these labels.
Non-starters for mad labels. We have complete creative control. You don't say a fucking word to us about the music. You put out whatever singles we want to put out. We have complete control over the art. We have complete control over the advertising. We have complete control over everything that happens in this situation. Get the fuck out of here. Go out. Get out, scoot. And then, to Rawkus's credit, they were presented with the same deal points and they went, that's interesting.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, we can work with that. Let's do this. And we had backed ourselves in a corner because we had, again, designed this thing to scare away because we didn't want to get trapped away. Listen, also, we're the first generation of dudes who knew the horror story.
Yeah.
Those horror stories about labels and the way that they fuck people over had just started to really come out in the hip hop world and really started to get known as the mythology. So we were also dealing with that. But we had backed ourselves in a corner because we had set a criteria that if met, then we couldn't reasonably say no.
Right.
And so they said yes. And we were like, oh shit. Okay. Guess we're doing up records,
Yeah.
And that's how that happened.
So what was behind the decision to, like, okay, so you got this EP that's already out there doing great work for y'all, getting y'all's names known, it's selling units. Y'all signed this deal with Rawkus. What is the thought of kind of repackaging Fun Crusher into a new project rather than just doing all new music for this initial deal?
Because for us it was like we wanted the world to hear this. We knew that we were only being exposed to like a very small group of people.
Gotcha.
A potent group of people, people who were really into the music, but it was still really small at the time. And we were so happy and like with the music that we didn't want to just throw it out and start all over again. And we considered this shit an EP. We basically said, this is what we want to do. We want to turn this EP into an album. We want to do more songs and we want to flesh it out and we want to make it a bigger, more unified piece. Mm-hmm. And, again, these days, 8 songs is not exactly an EP, for people.
Yeah, it's an album these days.
It's an album. But you're talking to guys who, when they made the album, there's 19 songs on it.
Right. So, yeah, that's true. You had to fill that whole CD.
We were like, yeah, you took right to the very fucking end. Like, we can't do it anymore. It's so good. We like one more song. That's what I think that a lot of young artists do with their first albums. I think that they have been waiting their whole lives to say something, and all their ideas are so new and so fresh, and they're so enamored with all of them that they want to present them all. And, you don't know if you're ever going to get the shot again, but you've been waiting for the shot your whole life. And so we just put everything that we had on that motherfucker. And that's why we did it. That's why we did that, because we were like, well, they were offering things that we did not have the chance to have, like a video, like retail promotion, like radio promotion, like, advertising, things that, they genuinely brought to the table. And they also got something from it because they saw that we were being positioned as being at the center of a movement. Yeah. Company Flow had turned into the faces of what the new independent scene was. And we had an ethos that people were connecting with, and that it was affecting people. It was affecting the way that people thought about the scene. So that was an ethos, and they didn't have an ethos. They didn't have a thing. They could now say independent as fuck. They could now say that they were a part of that. And they were. I mean, they were a part of that. They took it somewhere. They made it actually viable as all of a sudden we were in the Source. All of a sudden we were on Hot 97. All of a sudden, not because of any other reason than we were able to get it into people's hands now.
Right.
They didn't like the shit, they wouldn't put it in the Source. They didn't like the shit, they wouldn't play it. But it was not like we were on that payola level, It was like, this is an indie label. But it was one that had a staff, and they were hustling, and they were hungry, and they were excited. So it was an exciting era, but it did in some ways mark the end of that other era, in the sense of that culture that was free in a way because there was no chance at making any money.
Right.
There was no chance at fucking making any deals. There's something that comes with that that's beautiful. There's something that comes with that adds something to the scene that, I think disappears once business comes into it a bit.
Right. Once the stakes are higher, and once there's people you have to kind of answer to or include into the process that aren't like creatives themselves necessarily. Yeah. Like,
well,
it does
or more like once it's a business.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, all right, now I don't really have all the time in the world to just indulge in, like, I don't have there's that magical time when you're young between when you're doing something and when you're not, that all that time essentially is yours. Other than that time that you're trying to grind some shitty job that makes some money,
right?
The world is open, and you can spend your time freestyling with people in the subway station if you want, which we did. But it had this step the company Flow took also attracted other people to that label. It attracted, Talib Kweli. It attracted Most Def. It attracted Seminal. It attracted, it attracted a lot of other people that would fill out the roster.
Right.
And I don't know if it was the only thing that attracted them, but it definitely had an effect because we were an artist that people, it's just like me. If I'm looking to fuck with another label, I'm gonna look at their roster.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see who I want to be associated with.
See what they represent.
Correct. So that was the beginning of something else. It was the beginning of us being a part of something that I think would be looked at as a model for a new level of indie label.
Word. Well, let's talk about some of the songs a little bit. I remember hearing this album for the first time. I think it's 97. It came out, and this is in the middle of the kind of underground revolution that I'm taking place. I mean, it's taking place, in New York, in LA, and I'm in Chicago, where we're doing our own thing, b-boy arts, all of that, freestyling, tagging up trains.
Yeah, it was happening everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we weren't the center of the universe there. It was happening on the West. It was happening in different cities on the East. It was like, yeah.
But we were hearing where the music was coming from, and every now and then you get a hold of a project, and this this was one where you heard it and be like, yo, this is like aesthetically, artistically, like the spirit of this is like everything I'm doing right now. But in addition to that, I ain't never heard nothing like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think a lot of that has to do with your production style, which, of course has been lauded and has been talked about. But from your perspective, if you could put it in your own terms, like, what do you think makes it different than what other people do?
Oh man, shit. So at the time, I was using an EPS, an Sonic EPS 16 plus keyboard sampler. And the way that that's laid out is different than a drum machine in the sense that, and this is the technical maybe. This is maybe one thing that lends itself to a technical aspect of it that made things different because it leads you to thinking about the way that you put stuff together differently. You have things on keys as opposed to pads. You're tempted to start playing them like keys.
Yeah.
So when you have notes and things or samples, it could be a horn. All of a sudden, why couldn't that be the bass line?
Right.
You know what I mean? I just think that there's a different construction that made the technical intricacies of that thing just sounded different than I think what a lot of people were using in general. A lot of people were using drum machines and shit. But I think that also one of the things for me that maybe was simply influence. Not in terms of influence. We're all influenced by the same rap music. We're all influenced by the same rap records. But I don't think that we were all influenced by the same other shit.
Rock records, other genres in general.
And the shit that I listened to in my record collection that I could, the dollar bin pick up or whatever, I was attracted to different stuff. It wasn't of the ilk of what most people were thinking about sampling at the time for rap records, for records at all. I was trying to loop up noises, and I was attracted to jagged. First of all, I'm a child of influence from Run DMC, Stetsasonic, Ultramag, but also just as much. It was like Art of Noise.
Yeah.
It was like Devo. It was Prince, but also a lot of film shit. A lot like from a very young age was really into film shit, or I'd hear something and I'd try and find the soundtrack and just like I wanted to have something that just jaggedly fucking like, uppercutting. Not all the time. Sometimes it was a bop, but sometimes I think some of the shit that I was doing that other people weren't doing, it had a jaggedness to it that I in my head could rock over. You know what I mean? And I just don't think that many people were thinking about that type of sound to rock over, like that type of spirit of sound, but I had Run DMC in my blood, so it was stabs. It was shit that started but stopped again. It was things that, just like our language and how we could put our language together to say fucked up shit without even cursing. It was just, putting the word sound next to crush is fucked up. It feels
it's got the spirit of a curse word, even though it's not. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think as I was trying to find my footing, for me, I was attracted to mistakes. Like I was attracted to things that didn't work perfectly, because I thought it was ill if you could rock over something that wasn't smooth, that wasn't perfectly aligned, that wasn't going to have the same, that had to kind of wake you up a little bit, It inspired me as a rapper, but also it had to have those drums. It had to have that bop, and all my drums and all that shit. I wasn't using, at the time when I came out, everyone was very jazz influenced, everyone was very soul influenced, but I was using really big drums, you know, real, like shit that, because I came from the era of, I came from sucker MCs. So I, you know, and of course, I think that also, like I said, with even with being a rapper, it's like, you think that you're making some shit that makes sense to everybody,
Right.
and then you play it to them, and they're like, "That's crazy," you know. You're like, "Really?" Like, like, and then you know, and then you start to realize, like, I might be crazy. Like, I actually might be crazy. Slowly, you start to accept that shit. Like, yeah, I guess I'm just fucking weird because I hear this shit and it sounds normal to me. You know what I mean? But it matches up in my head with what's exciting about music. And
yeah, well, I mean, you know, it certainly seems to have worked out.
Stony Island Audio.